inspection of an aluminum propeller blade by a dye-penetrant inspection is accomplished to detect fatigue failure. A propeller synchrophasing system allows a pilot to reduce noise and vibration by adjusting phase angle between propeller on the aircraft engines. Ice formation on the propeller blade will produce unbalance and vibration. Now let's go to these random questions. Great caution should be exercised in handling damaged hermetically sealed turbine engine igniter transformer units because some contain radioactive material. A spark plug is fooled when it sparks ground without jumping electrodes. On an engine equipped with a pressure-type carburetor, fuel supply in the idling range is ensured by inclusion in the carburetor of a spring in the unmetered fuel chamber to supplement the action of normal metering forces. What would be checked or changed to ensure the validity of turbine engine performance check? If alternate fuel is to be used, fuel-specific gravity setting. Fuel-specific gravity setting. Capacitance after firing on a spark plug is caused by the stored energy in the ignition shielded lead unloading after normal time ignition. Capacitance after firing of a spark plug is caused by a stored energy in the ignition shielded lead unloading after normal time ignition. Which of the following obtained during magneto check at 1700 RPM indicates a short circuit between right magneto and primary and the ignition switch? Both 1700 RPM. Right 0 RPM, left 1700 RPM, off 0 RPM. Ice formation on the propeller blade will produce unbalance and vibration. Produce unbalance and vibration. What is the approximate position? The approximate position of a rotating magnet in the high tension magneto when the points first close. Full register. When a centrifugal force acting on the propeller governor flywheel overcomes the tension on the speeder spring, the propeller is in what speed condition? When the centrifugal force on a propeller governor flywheel overcomes the temperature, overcomes the tension on the speeder spring, the propeller is in what condition? Overspeed. Overspeed. Counterweights on a constant speed propeller are generally used to aid in counterweights, increasing blade angle. Counterweights on constant speed propeller are generally used to aid in increasing blade angle. Which of the following best describes the blade movement of a propeller that is in the high RPM position when reversing action is begun? Low pitch directly to reverse pitch. Low pitch directly to reverse pitch. Which of the following generally renders an aluminum alloy propeller unrepairable? Which of the following generally renders an aluminum alloy propeller unrepairable? Transverse cracks of any size. How is the oil pressure delivered on a hydromatic propeller normally stopped after the blade have reached their full feathered position? How is the oil pressure delivered on the hydromatic propeller normally stopped after the blade has reached their full feathered position? Electric cutout pressure switch. Electric cutout pressure switch. Electric cutout pressure switch. Yeah, boy. What is the primary purpose of the metal tipping which covers the blade tip? To prevent impact damage to the tip of the leading edge of the blade. What is the primary purpose of the metal tipping that covers the blade tip and extend along the leading edge of each wood propeller blade? To prevent impact damage to the tip of the leading edge of the blade. Which of the following functions requires the use of propeller blade station? Measuring blade angle. You use a propeller blade station to measure the blade angle. Okay. Let's go on to reciprocating. Let's do our first 10, 20. If the engine operates at a low oil pressure and a high oil temperature, the problem may be caused by leaking oil dilution valve. A leaking oil dilution valve. The operating temperature valve clearance on a radial engine as compared to cold valve clearance is greater. What will likely result in a piston ring gap if the piston ring gaps happen to be aligned when performing a differential pressure compression check on a cylinder? What will be the likely result if the piston ring gaps happen to be aligned when performing a differential pressure compression on a cylinder? A worn or defective ring indication. A worn or defective ring indication. If the intake valve is open too early in the cycle of operation of a 4-stroke cycle engine, it may result in backfiring into the induction system. If the intake valve is open too early in the cycle of operation of a 4-stroke cycle engine, it may result in a backfiring into the induction system. Cast iron piston rings may be used in chrome-plated cylinder true. Chrome-plated rings may be used in plain steel cylinders true. Both are true. If the crankshaft run out reading on a dial indicator are plus 0.002 inch and minus 0.003 inch, the runout is 0.005 inch. By use of the differential pressure compression tester, it is determined that cylinder 3 of a 9-cylinder radial engine will not hold pressure after the crankshaft has been rotated 260 degrees from top decenter. Compression stroke cylinder. How can this indication usually be interpreted? A normal indication. A normal indication. Direct mechanical push-pull carburetor heat control linkage should be normally adjusted so that the stop located on the diverter valve will be contacted before the stop at the control lever is reached in both hot in cold position. For the stopper, the control lever is reached in both hot and cold position. Which of these conditions will cause the engine to have an increased tendency to detonate? High manifold pressure or high intake air temperature? High manifold pressure or high intake air temperature. As the pressure is applied during a reciprocating engine compression check, using a differential pressure check tester, what would a movement of the propeller in the direction of the engine rotation indicate? The piston was positioned past that dead center. As the pressure is applied during a reciprocating engine compression check, using a differential pressure tester, what would the movement of a propeller in the direction of the engine rotate? Engine rotation indicate the piston was positioned past top dead center. If the oil pressure gauge fluctuates over a wide range from zero to normal operating pressure, the most likely cause is low oil supply. If the oil pressure gauge fluctuates over a wide range from zero to normal operating pressure, the most likely cause is low oil supply. Which of the following will cause by excessive valve clearance of a cylinder on a recip engine? Which of the following will cause by excessive valve clearance on a cylinder of the reciprocating aircraft engine? Reduced valve overlap period. Reduced valve overlap period. The 5 events of a 4-stroke cycle engine in order of their occurrence are intake, compression, ignition, ICI, PE. Intake, compression, ignition, power, exhaust. If the fuel-air ratio for proper ignition timing is correct, the combustion process should be completed just after top dead center. Just after top center at the beginning of the power stroke. If the fuel-air ratio is proper and the ignition timing is correct, the combustion process should be completed just after top center at the beginning of the power stroke. During ground check, an engine is found to be rough running. Magneto drop is normal. The manifold pressure is higher than normal. For any given RPM, the trouble may be caused by a dead cylinder. What is the advantage of using metallic sodium fill exhaust valve in aircraft? Reciprocating engine. What is the advantage of using metallic sodium fill exhaust valve in the aircraft recip engine? Reduce the valve operating temperature. Reduced valve operating temperature. Engine crankshaft runout is usually checked during engine overhaul and after a prop strike or sudden engine stoppage. Engine crankshaft runout is usually checked during engine overhaul and after a prop strike or sudden engine stoppage. During overhaul, the disassembled part of an engine is usually degreased with some form of mineral spirit solvent rather than water mixed degreaser, primarily because water mixed degreaser residues may cause engine oil contamination in the overall engine. Water mixed degreaser residues may cause engine oil contamination in the overall engine. What is likely to occur if the recip engine is operated at high power before it's properly warmed up? What is likely to occur if the recip engine is operated at a high power before it's properly warmed up? Or starvation of bearings and other parts. The primary concern in establishing the firing order for an opposed engine is provide a balance and eliminate vibration to the greatest extent possible. Which bearing is least likely to be roller or ball? Master rod bearing, radial engine. If the engine cylinder is to be removed, at what position in the cylinder should the piston be? If the engine cylinder is to be removed, at what position of the cylinder should the top dead center? Which of the following will decrease volumetric efficiency of the recip engine? Improper valve timing, sharp bends in the induction system, and a high carburetor air temperature. Grinding the valve of a recip engine to feather edge is likely to result in pre-ignition and burn valve. Pre-ignition and burn valve. If the air is heard coming from the crankcase breather, this is a good one. The air is heard coming from the crankcase breather or oil filler during differential compression check. What is this an indication of? Piston ring leakage. Piston ring leakage. If air is heard coming from the crankcase breather of an oil filler during differential compression check, what's this an indication of? Piston ring leakage. An exhaust valve leakage is heard at the exhaust stack or muffler. The intake valve leakage is heard at a carburetor inlet. Exhaust valve leakage is heard at the carburetor inlet. Okay. Why does the smoothness of operation of an engine increase with greater number of cylinders? The part impulses are spaced closer together. So what I've learned here is when you hear about exhaust valve leakage, you think about the carburetor inlet. So that's the one, that's how you can differentiate, because exhaust valve leakage, exhaust and carburetor inlet, you can remember that. Piston ring leakage, where's that coming from? That comes from the crankcase breather. Why does the smoothness of operation of the engine increase with greater number of cylinder impulses are spaced closer together? How is the proper end gap clearance on a new piston rings assured during an overhaul of an engine? By placing the rings in the cylinder and measuring the end gap with the feeler gauge. By placing the rings in the cylinder and measuring the end gap with a feeler gauge. Which type of bearing are gradually used for connecting rods and camshaft? Plain. Excessive valve clearance will cause the duration of valve opening to decrease for both intake and exhaust valve. Excessive valve clearance will cause the duration of valve opening to decrease for both intake and exhaust valve. Okay. An increase in the cylinder head temperature. What effect does a high atmospheric humidity have on the operation of the jet engine? Little or no effect. Using cool spark plugs in a high compression aircraft engine would probably result in normal operation. So cold spark plugs are used in the high compression aircraft engine. Why must a flow type carburetor supply a rich mixture during idle? Why must a flow type carburetor supply a rich mixture during idle? Because idling speeds and engine may not have enough airflow around the cylinder to provide proper cooling. Because why must a flow type carburetor supply a rich mixture during idle? Because the idling speeds, the engine may not have enough airflow around the cylinder to provide. Okay, when the ignition switch of a single recip engine aircraft is turned to the off position, the primary circuits of both magnetos are grounded. How is the oil pressure delivered to the hydromatic propeller normally stopped after the blades have reached their full feather position? How is the oil pressure delivered to the hydromatic propeller normally stopped after the blades have reached your full feather position. Electric cutout switch. The application of more protective coating on one blade than the other may be necessary to achieve final balancing. May be necessary to achieve final balancing. Which of the following function requires the use of propeller blade station? Measuring the blade angle. Propeller blade station used to measure the blade angle when troubleshooting an engine that will not idle. What would the probability cause economizer valve not operating correct? Defective spark plug will cause the engine to run rough at all speeds. In the high tension ignition system, the primary capacitor is too low. Too low a capacity will cause breaker points to burn in high tension ignition system. What is the relationship between distributor and crankshaft speed of an aircraft recip? The distributor turns at one-half the crank. The distributor turns at one-half crankshaft speed. The distributor turns at one-half crankshaft speed. What operational force tends to bend the propeller blade forward? Thrust bending force. The primary reason for careful inspection and prompt repairing of a minor surface defect, such as scratches, nicks, gouges, aluminum alloy propeller, is to prevent fatigue failure. When trimming a magneto internally, the alignment of the timing marks indicates that magnets are in the E-gap position. When timing a magneto internally, the alignment of the timing marks indicates the magnets are in the E-gap. The spark occurs at the spark plug when the ignition primary circuit is broken. Primary purpose of feathering propeller is to eliminate drag created by wheel milling propeller when the engine fails in flight. The purpose of the safety gap in the magneto is to protect the high voltage winding from damage. What is the difference between low tension and high tension engine ignition system? Low tension uses a transformer coil near spark plug to boost voltage. High tension system voltage is constant from magneto to spark plug. High tension constant from magneto to spark plug. Why do the turbine engine ignition system require high energy? To ignite the fuel under condition of high altitude and low temperature. To ignite the fuel under condition of high altitude, low temperature. Prior to performing an engine trimming, you should obtain the true temperature comparable to that of the air that enters the engine. An aircraft engine equipped with a pressure type carburetor is started with the primer while the mixture control is positioned in idle cutoff. Inspection of a pneumatic starter. Inspection of a pneumatic starter by a maintenance technician usually include checking the oil level and magnetic drain plug condition. Oil level and magnetic drain plug condition. What likely effect would cause a distributor rotor? What likely effect would a cracked distributor rotor have on a magneto? Ground the necessary circuit through the crack. Ground the secondary circuit. Ground the secondary circuit through the crack. Counterweights on a constant speed propeller are generally used to aid in increasing the blade angle. Counterweights on a constant speed prop are generally used to increasing blade angle. The purpose of the three-way propeller valve is to direct the oil from the engine oil system to the propeller cylinder. Which of the following best describe the blade movement of a feathering propeller that is in the high RPM position when the feathering action is begun? Low pitch to high pitch to feather position. Low pitch to high pitch to feather. When the centrifugal force acting on the propeller governor flyweights overcome the tension on the speeder spring. When the centrifugal force acting on the propeller governor flyweight overcome the tension on the speeder spring, the propeller is in what speed condition? Overspeed. Platinum and iridium ground electrodes used on fine wire spark plugs are extremely brittle and can be broken if they are improperly handled or adjusted. The platinum and iridium ground electrodes used on fine wire spark plugs are extremely brittle and can be broken if they are improperly handled or adjusted. When gapping massive electrode spark plug, the wire gauge should be inserted to avoid setting the gap too close. That's false. The platinum and iridium ground electrodes used on a fine wire spark plugs are extremely brittle and can be broken if they are improperly handled or adjusted. So only one is true. Why is 2 not true? The wire gauge should not be placed between the electrodes when moving the ground electrodes on a massive electrode spark plug. If the wire gauge is between the electrodes, pressure will be applied to the center electrodes and the nose core insulator will be strained and properly cracked. When checking the idle mixture on a carburetor, the engine should be idling normally. When pulling the mixture control towards the idle cutoff position, the correct idle mixture will be indicated by an increase of 10 to 50 RPM. An increase of 10 to 50 RPM. When preparing a propeller blade for inspection, it should be cleaned with mild soap and water. The aircraft propeller system beta range is used to produce zero or negative thrust. Magneto breaker points must be timed to open when greatest magnetic field stress exists in the magnetic circuit. What factor is not used in the operation of the aircraft gas turbine engine, fuel control unit, mixture control position? Because it's a turbine engine, you don't use mixture control. What action takes place when the cockpit control lever for a hydromatic constant speed propeller is activated? Compression of the speeder spring is changed. Where are the high and low pitch stops on the Hamilton standard speed or two-position counterweight propeller located in the counterweight assembly? Which of the following is used to correct horizontal unbalance of a wood propeller? Solder. Propeller blade station numbers increase from hub center line to tip. If a new breaker point is installed in a magneto on an engine, it will be necessary to time the magneto internally and the magneto to the engine. As the aircraft engine's speed is increased, the voltage induced in the primary coil of the magneto increases. Generally, the practice when trimming this engine is to turn all accessory bleed air off. What occurs when the back section type mixture control is placed and idle cut off? The flow chamber will be vented to a negative pressure area. What method is ordinarily used to make idle speed adjustment on a flow type carburetor, the adjustable throttle stop or linkage? If a flow type carburetor becomes flooded, the condition is most likely caused by a leaking needle valve and seat assembly. The throttle valve on a flow type carburetor is located between venturi and engine. When troubleshooting an engine that will not idle, what would be the probable cause? Economizer valve not operating correctly. The economizer system of a flow type carburetor performs which of the following functions? It supplies and regulates the additional fuel required for all engine speed above cruising. It supplies and regulates the additional fuel required for all engine speeds above cruising. The purpose of the back section mixture control in the flow type carburetor is to adjust the mixture by regulating the pressure and the fuel in the flow type carb. The purpose of the back section mixture in the flow type carburetor is to adjust the mixture by regulating the pressure on the fuel in the flow type carburetor. If an engine is equipped with a flow type carburetor and the engine runs excessively rich at full throttle, possible causes trouble is a clogged main air bleed. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up right here and continue later.